The Prenuvo. There's many names for these things. They're called whole body MRIs. They're supposed to reassure you, give you peace of mind. I had a friend who talked to me about how it settled him. He's worried about a lot of things, probably all stress related, a lot of symptoms, all probably stress related again. Nothing's really wrong with him, but that whole body MRI made him really feel calm, at peace, knowing that there's nothing wrong with him. And I corrected him, but he didn't really want to hear it. And I guess my question is, you know, why doesn't anybody talk about this? Snake oil sellers, Prenuvo, Prenuvo, whole body MRIs, making sure that you're not going to die of cancer earlier than you expected. They'll catch things in their earliest stage. And I would say, yeah, it sounds great. Sign me up. Oh, but not that Prenuvo. That doesn't actually work for that purpose. Oh, that one? No, that's not quite adequate because it's too complex. It's too nuanced. I was Googling it and I found some articles like Cleveland Clinic saying that, there's some doctor talking about there's risks, right? Because you find all these things that are probably benign and you get worried about them. Yes, but let's talk about the other aspect of things, right? Is there a risk that you actually miss stuff and you think that you've caught it, you checked, right? For example, if I'm looking for something, right? Can't find my phone at home, common occurrence, right? And my wife's like, yeah, I've looked there, and I don't bother to look there. But eventually I can't find it and check where she said she checked and find it there, then I'd be upset at her. She said she looked there, but it's there. She didn't look. But you can't say she didn't look. What you can say is she didn't look carefully. She didn't look thoroughly, right? So the pre-nouveau, you look, but is it thorough? Is it careful? So the first thing you should understand is that MRI and a CT are complementary. They're not free. Nothing's free in life. MRI is often preferred by many people because it's just no radiation. It's a different technology altogether. It has to do with the spins of electrons and things like that. But here's the deal. CTs are better at things. That's why we still have them around. It's not just because we don't care. In younger people, there are still times to use CT scans, even though we prefer MRIs. I've learned better at anatomy. MRI is better at soft tissue. But those are all generalizations. And a specific issue with CTs and MRIs is there's no one size fits all. I wish we had a tricorder like in Star Trek, you just scan someone, know whatever's wrong with them. But why do doctors check multiple things? If you take an extreme example of MRI could tell you, I think, why do you bother getting labs? Can't you see it on MRI? Any single doctor would laugh at you and say, you're ridiculous. What do you can see on? You can see how many potassium cells there are or potassium molecules there are. That's just stupid. And it is, right? So the first thing you have to know is even within MRIs and CTs, there are different sequences, different modalities, different ways we image different parts of the body. In CTs, for example, there's something called an angiogram. MRI, there's also an angiogram. There's different ways of doing it. In CT with contrast, MRI, there's different ways of doing it without contrast. But the idea is that you're looking at different things. If you look at blood vessels and flows, you do an MRI angiogram, which is different from a regular MRI. Also, if you're looking at different body parts, like for the liver, the pancreas, you may look at different ways of doing MRI as well. And some stuff MRIs just can't do well. Like, for example, the heart, looking at the arteries, yeah, I'm sure they've tried, just can't do it well. You need a CT scan. Looking at your gut, so you don't have to do a colonoscopy. That's called a virtual colonoscopy, and that's, again, a CT scan, not an MRI. See, there's also the fact there's something called contrast. These whole body MRIs don't give you contrast. And contrast, if you can imagine, enhances stuff, makes it easier to see some stuff. And without that, some things you can't see. When people are concerned about a patient having metastatic brain cancer, you have to do an MRI with contrast and compare it to without contrast to see if there's any differences. Otherwise, you'll miss it. These don't have contrast. It's a lot of words to say that you can't just simply do one study and be reassured. Sure, that's not a great sales pitch. I'm sure most people don't want to hear that. But unfortunately, it's much, much, much more complicated than even that. So a lot of people who know a little bit are scared of pancreatic cancer. Like, oh, I wish we get it caught early. That's what me and my friends in residence said. After this lady gets it caught late, metastatic, done. Now that I know more, talking to people who actually deal with these things, the answer is doesn't help. You catch it early, you cut it out, and it comes back. Like, oh, so I thought the point of catching early was so you could cut it out. Well, it is, but if it comes back, then what have you done? Because it's a humongous procedure getting a Whipple. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not 100% that come back. It's also not 100% people that doctors say you're going to die are going to die because numbers just don't simply work that way. My roommate in college, actually, his mom had stage 4 lung cancer, was supposed to die, and she lived for 10 more years. So, yeah, numbers are just sort of numbers, aren't absolute. But here's the thing, what is it about cancer, right? Is that the only thing you're concerned about? See, these people, the ones doing the scans, the doctors ordering them, I don't want to say they're stupid because they're not. They're probably smarter than average Joe, but they're not really that smart or that intellectual or that brainy. Because look, if you're looking at a brain, sure you can look for a mass, but I would say more concerning for me than a brain tumor that's not seen, right? That's sort of pretty easy seen. Is an aneurysm. Are they doing an MRA brain to look for aneurysms? I don't think so. Honestly, aneurysms are a bigger concern, and there seem to be a lot of them, incidentally found sometimes, and not so incidentally found other times. Why don't you look at that? In terms of cancers, why don't you check these people for genetic mutations? See if they're at risk for this, that. We're knowing more and more. If they want to try to do something about it, they can start investing in organs. If you have this risk, right, for this or that cancer, then you could take a look, right? A colonoscopy is much better than an MRI of your belly. Look at colon cancer. A million times better. And guess what? If you find something, you might actually do something about it. And even beyond that, you could get better colonoscopies. You know why? A lot of new techniques out there to help doctors so they don't miss stuff. There's new tagging methods, right, for virtual colonoscopy. In terms of regular so virtual is the one with CT where you don't have to actually get a camera put inside your butt. The other one is if you want to get a regular colonoscopy, right? There's like different light spectrums, different way to do stuff, so they actually see better. Because you can imagine if they do it day in day out all the time, eyes get tired, some fatigue, and some people are just better at seeing stuff. But if you make it easier, right, then they can see more. There's a lot of stuff to talk about, right? Your family member had this or that, then you should look specifically at that, right? Instead of just generally looking for anything and everything under the sun. That's like a wide overview, like an aerial view, which you can make some comments, but not too great. Just send somebody on the ground to look into it further, right? I think that's a good idea. But I think that's the thing. Worried well doctors, concierge medicine, right? I feel they could be very helpful. I've seen one semi-concierge doctor, concierge, whatever you have, actually help the patient. The patient lost hundreds of pounds, like 200. It probably saved his life when he got hospitalized next. It's amazing how much difference they can make. But there's also the idea of treating the worried well, ordering tests. My friend commented that I probably over ordered, but that's fine. I think that's fine. He's paying for it. I don't think there's much risk to most testing. But I do dislike, I abhor the idea of telling people things that are wrong. If you do an imaging study, like an X-ray, and say, "Oh, lungs look fine, you don't have lung cancer," any pulmonologist, any radiologist laugh at you because that's simply not true. Reassurance is one thing, and a lot of doctors reassure patients without knowing anything, without doing any studies. That's also another thing. But doing a study that's not appropriate for the indication and saying that you've been checked out is like telling the patient, "Yeah, yeah, we'll have our doctor check you out." And a medical student in his second year walks in and says, "Ah, you're good." You really think so? It's not valid. Doesn't hold any water. I would say just don't do it. But I know a lot of it is about the money and that blinds people.